Great. So, I object. We're going to speak about objection handling. The American Management Association runs tests on different topics, and one of them was what skills are needed by various people in the organization. One of the people that they focused on was the leader. And at the top of the list of all of the skills needed by a leader was one particular statement. What was interesting was another area of the test that was focused on was a new one, which was the internal customer service professional. Yeah? So the internal person who serves the need of the business. Yeah? Another one was the sales person, the sales director. And at the top of these lists were the same comment, the same skill, the same competency. What do you think it was? Organization and management?
I don't know the real word for it, but like objection management.
Objection handling, the ability to handle objections. Yeah, it was on the list, but it wasn't at number one.
Negotiation.
Being able to negotiate? No, was not. It was on the list, but not at number one. The top skill of a leader, the top skill of a salesman, the top skill of an internal...
Being able to say no?
Being able to say no was not it. Communication skills was not it. It's part of communication skills, but it wasn't called communication. So it's an element of communication skills. I beg your pardon?
Persuasion.
Sorry?
Listen.
I beg your pardon? Listening, yeah? Listening skills.
That's one?
Yep. Listening skills. The ability to listen well was at the top of the list of a number of different professions as being skill number one. Skill number one that people have naturally, skill number one that should be trained, yeah, and a very important skill. What's interesting, when we link this word to this word, the word objection, is that there is a good affiliation or companionship or relationship between good objection handling abilities and good listening skills, which we will discover quite shortly. So, what are some of the objections that you receive from your business partners?
Too expensive.
Too expensive. Oh, no, it isn't. Yeah, that's the Monty Python approach to handling objections. Oh, no, it isn't. Oh, yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. This is not a very good way of handling objections. Another objection.
It's too much time consuming. The time plan is too long.
Too much time.
Too complex.
Too complicated.
We want to work with local vendors.
Yeah. Definitely.
Local language.
We want to work with a local vendor, local language. Only. Yep. What other objections do we have? No? You don't hear any other objections from your internal customers? Good. That's a nice level of objection that we have here. So, can somebody please object to me using one of these objections? Yeah, you pretend you're the business partner. Philip, could you use one of these objections on me?
Yeah, you're using too much time to talk about objectives, Tim.
Well, we have to use this time to speak about objectives because it's very important.
Yeah, but we have so much other things we need to go through, so you have to keep the time down, please.
I'm afraid you don't understand. These objectives are so important that we need to make sure there's absolute clarity on them before we move forward. Okay? Is this a good way of dealing with an objection? So. What was very interesting is if we listened to the first words that came from Philip after I handled the objection the first time round, we would have noticed a particular word coming up. Let's try it again. Could you object to me using one of these objections?
Tim, I think you're just too complex.
Too
complex.
No, we're not. We're not complicated at all. Everybody else is much more complicated than we are.
The ideas doesn't compare to each other. The solution you provide is just too complex.
Well, I don't think we're complex. I think we're actually pretty easy. But if you think we're complex, what can I do? Is this a good way of handling an objection? Not really. No?
No, you just threw the ball at me.
Yeah.
No.
Not a good way of handling an objection. Yeah, Jessica, could you object to me using one of these objections?
I need the solution fast. And you?
You need the.
I need the solution
Okay.
in fast solution.
Okay.
And your plan is not good for me because it's
Okay.
very long time.
We're not going to get it fast for you. It's not going to. Your timelines are wrong. It's. So, not a good way of handling an objection. Yeah.
No.
So, the wrong way of dealing with an objection creates what?
Mess.
A mess, a fight, yeah, and conflict,
Ruining the relationship.
and potentially ruining the relationship. Yeah. So, but these are very real objections. So what we would like to do is to focus on the correct way of dealing with an objection. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay. So just looking at a couple of ways that the objections were handled. So we had a ladies group and a guys group, and I don't want to say that ladies are generally better at handling objections than guys, but ladies are generally handling objections better than guys. Yeah. Well, it's what's interesting is that so the ladies group at the beginning. Pretty much in the first round, all of the girls, you did this as well. Yeah, this was the objection, this was the answer. Brrr. Yeah, so objection 1 line, answer 10 lines. In the first round, that was all of the ladies did exactly the same thing. In the second round, a couple of you did this, but most of you had already moved on from that time. Yeah. So in the second round, there was one person said, "Yeah, and what is your expectation?" So instead of answering, you used a question instead. And another person said, "Well, how much time would you have?" Yeah. So instead of answering, you asked a question instead. Yeah. And so this was already a little bit better. Yeah. However, from the first, the ladies' round, I heard this statement quite often. This is a very important statement in objection handling. This is yes, but. Yeah. What does the word "but" mean?
No.
No, you're wrong. Yeah. Imagine the following situation. Yeah, guys, imagine this. Girlfriend comes up to you. She says, "Darling, do you think I'm beautiful?" Yeah? And you say, "Yes, but." Yeah? This is not a good idea. This will lead to conflict. Okay? And the other reason that we want to try and avoid the word but is because but has got two meanings. Yeah, you know, this meaning and this meaning as well. So if you want to show somebody your butt, then you say yes, but. That's actually not really a conventional meaning of the word but it is quite useful for getting people to try and say the word but. Yeah? So we want to try and avoid this. It's actually extremely difficult to avoid. It's very, 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 very difficult to avoid or to take this word out of your dictionary, out of your vocabulary. Yeah? From now on, you will start remembering that it has quite an interesting meaning as well. So we try and avoid it. We try and use the word and, or we try and say nothing instead of the word but. Because but always creates argument. But always creates conflict. Yeah? As soon as you say the word but, it asks somebody to defend themselves, which means you move into a small conflict situation.
However is valid, it's a valid word.
However is a dignified and intelligent way of saying but. Yeah. Also it's not really appropriate, because what it means is I'm going to say that I agree with you, but I really don't. Yeah? And so the word but always creates a negative for everything that you've just said before it. And the word however is effectively the same. Yeah? So we need to think of a different strategy in order to approach it. The best strategy is silence. Or the best, another good strategy is to replace the word but with the word and. It changes it completely. Yeah? And. Yeah?
Yes.
We can, if we move on to the guys, yeah? Guys, consistently, this was the result. Here was the objection, here was the answer. Objection comes one statement. The answer comes brum. Yeah? 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. And this is very typical. And it's this principle of I will answer the objection by speaking. And if I speak long enough, they will agree. Yeah? And this is also not an ideal way of dealing or handling an objection. Yeah? We did have some great examples. One person said, yes, but I think it's actually the correct way. Yeah? I thought that was a great answer. Another person said, I know. I know. But. Terrific. 5 times I know, followed by a big but. And so that was a great way of handling an objection as well. So objections are very interesting, right? Because how many objections do you have to deal with on a daily basis? Lots. Yeah? Lots.
Gone the good answers.
There we go. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a technique for handling an objection. And this technique will show you how to deal with objections, and then you can start practicing. If you're married, if you have a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a dog, you have to deal with objections on a daily basis. If you have kids, you have them multiplied by 100. Yeah? If you work in an organization where you need to deliver results to people, then you have a lot of objections to deal with as well. Sometimes they are normally a little bit politer than they are at home, but they're still objections. So dealing with objections in a constructive way is something that we would definitely benefit from looking at. We'll do that now. Continuing into objection handling, the first thing that we do before we look at the technique of how to handle objection is to just consider this following statement. The statement that when you hear an objection from somebody, people generally do not say what they mean the first time round. Yeah? So, for example, the objection that you will hear is, it's too expensive. What do they mean when they say that? What are the possibilities that are open to us? When somebody says it's too expensive, what could they mean?
I don't want to spend the budget project.
So I don't have the budget. Well, that's.
No, I don't want to spend the budget to that project. I have other priorities.
Okay. Other. So I have other priorities. I think one of my other priorities is more valuable than this project, so I'm going to say it's too expensive, but I don't actually mean that. Yeah? What's another reason for saying it's too expensive?
I'm not interested in your topic.
That's right. I'm just not interested in this topic at all. But I'm too polite to say so. So instead, I'll say it's too expensive. Yeah? What else? Other reasons for saying it's too expensive.
I know a cheaper vendor, and I want to work with them. I want another vendor, actually.
Okay, so one reason could be there is a cheaper offer on the table. Another reason could be I don't like you. It's another reason for saying it's too expensive. Yeah, a bit of a personal reason. What other reasons could there be? Another reason is quite simply ego. It's too expensive. I want to negotiate. I want to haggle. I always say it's too expensive. It's one of the things that I say, even when I don't really think about it.
Yeah, it's because of negotiation addiction.
Negotiation tactic. Yep, yep. So, nego tactic, which is fine.
They always want a second round for the offers.
Okay,
Yeah, especially the people from sales.
there we go. I want a discount, please.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, and therefore I will say it's too expensive.
Or I had a prior bad experience.
Ah.
And I won't take risks.
There we go. Prior bad experience. I paid too much in a previous project and I don't want to have that same experience again. Yeah? So look at that. It's too expensive is one statement that means nothing. Look at all of these statements that are real statements which mean a lot. So you can do something with these statements. You can't do much with the simple statement, it's too expensive. So a clear objection handling technique is necessary because if you answer the statement, it's too expensive, you will answer the wrong objection. It's too expensive is also a legitimate objection. Yeah? But if you answer that one, you may be answering the wrong one. So the objection handling technique is there for us to constructively move through a particular objection. So we have 5 different stages. What do you think are on this list of 5 different stages?
I guess first we object to. Like they make an objection and we start with but or you're wrong or
Okay.
no.
Okay, well, that is going into the answer. Yeah, so by saying those things, you're effectively going into the answer to the objection itself. And obviously the answer to the objection needs to be a part of the objection handling process, but it's not the first stage, it's our 3rd stage. So what else do you think we would find here?
Asking questions.
Asking questions. So we're going to say that asking questions is our 2nd stage, and we're going to call it the clarification stage. The clarification stage will say, it's too expensive. What do you mean by that? Yeah? So a clarification question is designed to dig into the objection a little bit further.
Deep listening. I mean, could you please clarify more?
Okay?
What do you mean by expensive?
Well, that's the clarification question, yeah? And that is an example of deep listening, for sure. But here we have an example of listening as well. What comes at the beginning?
Empathy. Trying to
Showing empathy, trying to understand.
Definitely.
Yes, these things sound like a good idea. How do you do this?
You're right.
You're okay. It's too expensive. You're right.
You're right.
Okay.
This works for me.
Yeah, that'll work for you.
Take you too much time.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're right, but
Yeah.
But
No, but.
what's your choice?
Not but. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what can we say here?
Maybe silence waiting for an additional information.
Silence.
Silence.
No, we don't want to use silence at this stage.
It's aggressive.
You're too expensive. This is hiding. Maybe they'll go away. Yeah? What we want to do with this first stage is a very, very important stage. A lot of you did it instinctively in the first exercise. Yep. Very often people do this as an instinctive way thing. And there's an easy way and a slightly more complex way. But what we want to do with it is demonstrate empathy to a certain extent, demonstrate understanding, yes, and what was the number one skill on the list of leaders and customer service professionals? Listening. So how do I demonstrate that I've listened well?
Repeat the sentence.
There we go. You repeat the sentence. So could you object to me using one of our objections? What was one of the objections that we had?
Too complex.
Too complex.
So it's too complex. Is that correct?
Yes, it is too complex.
Okay. What was another objection that was there? Philip?
Too much time.
So you're saying it's taking us too much time, or your perception is that it takes too much time for the project to roll out.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah?
It means that you understand them.
Yes. Marie, what was another one of the objections?
It's way too expensive.
So you think it's way too expensive?
It's just too expensive.
Yeah.
Way too.
Okay. Okay. Luis, what was another one of the objections?
What? Yeah, we prefer a local vendor. Yeah, it's a pretty common one.
So you prefer another vendor to work with you prefer a local vendor to work with on this project. Okay. So what do we do within this acceptance stage? We call it the acceptance stage. What we do is we repeat the objection. You don't have to repeat the objection. You can say, uh-huh. You can say, ooh. You can say, hmm. You can say, really? In Germany, you would say, boah, eh. That's what the Germans say. That's right. Yes, they do. Echt? Oh, right. You would say echt. You would say really? Boah, eh. Maybe that's in Austria. Yeah? The acceptance stage is the stage where you effectively demonstrate active listening. Yeah? Now let's look at the following example. Philip, say to me it's too expensive, and I'll do it in the old way. And let's just play this through.
It's way too expensive.
I think if you actually look at the total project price, you'll see that the price is comparable to everybody else on the market.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, but the real world is that you would say, yes, but I haven't got the money. Or yes, but it's not within my budget. Yeah?
I don't care the market.
Or I don't care about the market, it's not my problem. You know, it would go into a discussion. Yeah? Within this way, look at what happens at the end of the objection. Jessica, say to me it's too expensive.
It's too expensive.
So it's too expensive for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and look at the fundamental difference in reaction that you get using one way or the other way. One way gives you the answer no, gives you the answer but, gets somebody to shake their head and conceptually and psychologically put themselves into the aggressor's position where you begin a fight. The other way, the person is going, yes, they're nodding their head. Sometimes they even smile, yeah? And they're showing agreement, and they're basically showing, yes, you've understood what my objection is, yeah? So this acceptance stage, even though it's quite small, even though you don't literally need to repeat the objection that it is there, it is a psychological step that gets understanding, creates empathy, creates rapport, and demonstrates that you've listened. Because you're demonstrating that you're listening, you're also thinking a little bit about what you're going to come up with as an answer and what you're going to come up with as a clarification question. So, without even moving forward, we already have the two main cornerstones of effective objection handling. Number one, accept the objection by repeating it. Acknowledge and repeat what the objection is. Yeah? Number two, clarify the objection. Ask a question that gives you more information and allows you to start trying to collect some other information that may be helpful in answering the objection. The fourth stage, having answered the objection, we can check whether we have answered the objection. And finally, we may need to counter. And the counter stage is this. In the situation that you're not able to answer the objection, it happens. In a situation where you do answer the objection handling technique ends here. Yeah? You say, have I answered your question? They say yes, and you move on. Sometimes they will say no. And you will say, okay, well, here's the deal. You've got an objection, I've got a position, and we cannot find a balance for this at the moment. But, and this is where the but is quite useful, however, as I have other things to speak about, we have got other topics on the table, let's put this particular topic on the side, let's speak about the other things first, and come back to it at the end. Maybe it will have changed. This is the negotiator's tactic of taking an objection, using it as one piece of many other pieces, and seeing if time has a positive effect on it when all of the other argumentation and discussion is done. Yeah? Generally speaking, one objection will lose its value over time. If it still remains a showstopper, it will be a showstopper anyway, and you'll need to do something else with it. Okay? So the counter stage is the stage where you say, okay, I'm sorry, I've got this position, you've got this position, there's no balance at the moment, we can't do anything about this here. And the recommendation is to put it on the side and come back to it later. Okay? So, acceptance means acknowledge and repeat. The clarify stage means ask for more information. Good. What I would like you to do now is turn to your partner on the table and to just practice this a couple of times with a couple of the objections that we have before we move into the second practice stage. Objection handling number 5273. Sometimes when you start using the objection handling technique, they say it's too expensive. You say, okay, so the price is an issue for you. Could you give me a bit more information about that? And then they say, well, you know, budget at the moment is very tight. I would like to do this, but I don't have enough money to focus on this particular project. And you say, okay, so let me just understand this correctly. You say budget's very tight and you would like to do it, but you don't want to put it on this project. And they say, well, yes, because the other project is more valuable than this one. And you say, okay, so the other project is more valuable than this one, so we're comparing that project against this one. And they say, yes, and you know, theirs is cheaper. And you say, okay, so their project, which has got nothing to do with this one, is cheaper than this one, so we're comparing the project and the price of the project. And they say, well, actually, I just don't have any authority to sign off on this project anyway. And you say, okay, so you don't have the authority to sign off on this particular project, yeah? And they say, yes, and we're not going to do it until next year. And you say, okay, good. Yeah? The objection handling technique sometimes arrives at a situation where the objection comes and you handle it by listening actively. The process of listening actively makes them give you some more information. You listen to that actively. They give you some more information. You listen to that actively. They give you some more information. you listen to that actively. You never get past this stage because you're doing all of your active listening. They're giving you more and more information. You never actually get around to a clarification question, or sometimes you do, and they give you more information that changes the objection. So then you need to go back and say, so is this the objection? And they say, well, yes, but. You say, give me some more information on that. And they give you sometimes the objection lies 3, 4, 5 or 6 layers deep. Does that make sense? Yeah. The first statement is, it's too expensive. And then you're going, okay, 1, okay, 2, okay, 3. And then you go, oh, Jesus, okay, 4, okay, 5. Oh my God. Yeah? And 6 or 7 layers later, you finally arrive at what is the real objection. This is the nirvana of objection handling. Yeah? And this is actually what we're really focused on doing. And it's just this acceptance that people very often do not say what they mean. Yeah? And in Northern Europe, generally speaking, the objection is the objection with 1 or 2 layers in between. Yeah? In Southern Europe, there are 3 or 4 layers. In the Arab environment, the Jordanians have 1 layer. Yeah? But the Palestinians and the Lebanese, they'll have 3 or 4 or 5 layers. The Saudis will have 8 or 9 layers. Yeah? Very culturally different. In Asia, there are, it's like a bloody onion. There are so many layers. Right? Yeah. So, but what's important is that everybody has these layers, and it's the objection handling technique is an acceptance that these layers are there, and a proactive way of moving through them in a positive way, in a way that is always constructive. So, one thing that the objection handling technique does, is that it confronts you with the amount of times that you say, but. Yeah, that's one very clear benefit of the objection handling technique. Another result of the objection handling technique is that it confronts you with the knowledge, I listen well, or I don't really listen at all. Yeah, and a lot of people spend a lot of their time not listening very well. And so active listening, again, is the key skill. The key skill of leadership, the key skill of internal sales, and the key skill of external sales. And it's a key skill in every business environment. It does require practice, and it does require a process of repeating what you hear in order to demonstrate that you've really listened well and actively as well. So anyway, you have now 8 films, 4 before the technique and 4 after the technique. So you will be able to form an opinion for yourselves as to the difference of your objection handling technique with the technique and without. So this is like the before and after effect that you see in the newspapers, where you see the guy with no hair in picture A, and then in picture B he's got dreadlocks, and so in the same way we will have the before and after effect on the film as well. I think there's only one final thing that we need to say to the technique. Sometimes people say things that are just negative. Yeah? Negative statements. Simple negative statements like, it'll never work. Yeah? What's another negative statement? Rubbish. We've done that before. We've tried that before. It didn't work last time. Yeah? These are what we call negative statements, and it is not necessary to handle a negative statement. If you think that it's a negative statement, it's not necessary to say, okay, so you think we're useless. Yes. And can I ask you a couple of questions why that is? Yeah? Not necessary. Negative statements are simply there to make people feel good about themselves for whatever reason. People use negative statements for a number of different reasons. From our perspective, when we're in the objection handling process, we don't need to worry about them. We need to reflect on this particular principle, which is Buddha is good. I expect that this is the wrong time to tell you that I have a hidden agenda behind this whole seminar. I'm actually deeply religious. I'm a Buddhist, and my whole plan behind this seminar is to indoctrinate you with the Buddhist faith. Yeah? Actually, that's not true. But Buddhism does have a very good suggestion for us in terms of negative comments. Yeah? Imagine you're sitting in a river doing meditation, okay? In a nice shallow river with the stones, and the river is going by and the sun is shining, the birds are singing, etc., etc., etc. Yeah? And all of a sudden, and you're sitting there going, as meditators do. And all of a sudden, you notice out of the corner of your eye something yucky floating down the river. It's yucky. It's brown. It's really yucky. Yeah? And it's floating through the river, and it's going to float right by you. What do? Do you pick it up? Yeah? Ugh. No, you don't. You let it float by. Yeah? Because Buddha is good. It will go away. It will just go down the river. So you just let it float by. So if somebody says a negative statement and you're saying to yourself, why did they say that? Yeah? Don't bother handling it as an objection. Just let it float by. It will go by. It will disappear. It will go on down the river, and you don't need to worry about it. Don't pick it up. It's not very sensible to do that. The other thing about objection handling is the following. The word objection is a negative word, right? An objection is a negative thing. But look at this word, object. The word object is not negative, right? The word object is neutral. So if somebody should come up to you and say, hey, this project was brilliant, it was excellent, really liked it, yeah? Treat it in the same way as you would treat an objection. Handle it. Oh, it was brilliant. Yes. Fantastic. What was good about it? Yeah? And just because we use the objection handling technique for negative situations doesn't mean it doesn't have just as much value for positive situations as well. So treat a positive objection in the same way as any objection and handle it effectively. You will get a lot of value out of the conversation based on that. So the objection handling concept, in summary, is a way of getting more value out of the discussions that you have, and a way of constructively dealing with potentially negative situations so that you can move on to something constructive at the end.